that you guys are able to pop on through. We have an interesting discussion, or we're actually going to have a series of interesting discussions tonight. Tonight we are discussing anchor babies, which it may be an unfamiliar term to some of you, and that's completely okay. That's the purpose of this. We're just engaging in dialogue. We're going to talk a little bit about the 14th Amendment, especially in light of President Trump's recent news that came out. I believe it was 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. Also, we're going to have a discussion about abortion. This is a hot topic. We're going to talk about birth. We're going to talk about, what exactly is conception? What's a baby? Is it an embryo? We're just going to go all through it. So we have some wonderful people who are on tonight. We've got Naomi. We have Saul G. We have Matthew Sanchez. Matthew, you can say hey. We've got Joe is here. We also have Matthew Cordell is also here, and our beloved Armand. No, bad joke. Matthew. It's another Matthew, I think. We're going to continue to move forward because we've got an awesome discussion. So we're just going to go ahead and crank it up here. We're going to start off with our anchor baby discussions. Solomon, I'm actually going to have you start us off. Let's if you could just kind of educate the folks, and we'll just kind of tag team from there. What is an anchor baby? Who are, is this a baby who is on the boat and they've got an anchor sinking them at their foot? What's an anchor baby? Talk to us about that.
All right, basically what an anchor baby is most of the time it's dealing with someone who comes to this country as a pregnant person. They come to the country and they're pregnant. And then what happens is they have their baby on American soil, and the way the law is written right now, that baby is a U.S. citizen. So what you have is people that are either crossing the border, catching a flight with either a visa or a passport to come to America, so they can have babies. If you think of I heard it today. They said that you have Chinese people as well who are flying out to New York, having anchor babies so that their babies can be American citizens, and then in turn they turn around and try to eventually use that baby who's an American citizen to get them citizenship in this country. So that's what an anchor baby is. I guess the biggest debate right now is about whether or not we should change it. And that is because President Trump he's thinking about, or you've seen it on the news, he's thinking about signing an executive order that would basically terminate this, I don't know if you want to call it a privilege, or basically just terminate this right. I'll call it a right for what it is right now because it is in the 14th Amendment. So basically what the debate right now is, do you agree with President Trump? Do you feel that, do you think the executive order should be enforced? Or do you feel that we should keep things as is? And if you're a baby born in America, that should guarantee you to be an American citizen. So we can basically just, go back and forth from that. Joe, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Well, that's to put me on the spot. Well, honestly, before all this, I really had no idea what an anchor baby was. So I kind of had to look into the 14th Amendment for myself. And I kept seeing stuff about it was only pertaining to, slaves. Basically, it was for Black people during that time. Thank you. Now, when it comes down to people crossing the border or flying in, let's say for vacation, having a baby, and then they're all automatically an American citizen, I don't see that as a free pass, honestly. As it says, in the 14th Amendment, it's to the jurisdiction of basically Americans. So basically, people try to find the loopholes in it, but it very clearly states that it's just with the jurisdiction of America. So you can't come from China, have a baby, and the same rights are afforded to you. As far as I'm concerned, it's very clear cut. There is no real way around it. That's really how I feel about it. I guess I'll probably have to listen a little bit more, maybe be doing some, more research while we speak. But as of right now, that's my baseline. Could change, maybe not, but to me, it seems really clear cut from what I've seen so far.
Basically being subject to jurisdiction. Okay, that's the main thing where they have issues, because basically what we're trying to figure out, and it's probably going to end up in the Supreme Court, in my opinion, is what does subject to jurisdiction mean? Now, in my opinion, the ones that fly here, and let's say they're both, in the case that they use, they're Chinese citizens. If they fly to New York, they have the baby, they are still under the jurisdiction of the Chinese government. So it is, to me, somewhat different, because
Absolutely.
the only reason why I feel like it's different only is because, like, that's what I think they call it, like travel birtherism. It's something like travel birth or
Birth tourism.
birthright, yeah, birth tourism or something like that. So the way that it's constructed right now is the debate is, what does jurisdiction, basically, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's the main part that's being up for debate right now. So the way I look at it is, if I can deport you, right, then technically aren't you under the jurisdiction of the United States, right? So if you're under the jurisdiction of the United States and I can deport you, and let's say somebody, let's not use the one where you got on a plane. Let's use the one that they seem to like use all the time, which is the people who come across the border illegally, have a baby in this country. All right. I think that's the one that my take on it is, like I said, is the fact that I think that they're American citizens because they were born here. Because if you remove the parents, right, it's about the jurisdiction of the baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's hypothetically say you have a mother that dies in childbirth. Then what? Are you going to ship the baby back somewhere? Or is it going to be an American citizen? And even if it was adopted by American parents, that still wouldn't negate its citizenship. So I think that it's a very tricky subject, because when you start saying if you're born in a country, you're not a citizen of that country, I think this is the one that black people come in and said, see, we told you, if we can start to roll back the 14th Amendment, then kind of sort of what else can we roll back? If we can start to roll back citizenship of people who were born here, this is, to me, going to give people the opportunity to start taking this conversation in a bunch of different directions. Matthew Sanchez, go ahead.
From what I remember, this was enacted in 1868. Am I correct? This 14th Amendment. So pertaining to
yes.
It pertains to freed slaves, and I think the United States and Canada are the only two countries that have something like this. If you go to Europe, their citizenship laws actually are quite strict. In France, I think you would have to have one parent that was at least French, and if you're Mexican, you would have to have both parents that are Mexican, and then therefore that child would be a Mexican citizen. So I think we have to look at the other countries as well and see how their citizenship laws are. They turned out to be significantly more strict than ours, and they're not the ones having that problem. And granted, Europe is more open borders than we are, so if we're trying to close our borders down, especially with this migrant issue, I think that this could be an issue that we might have to look at, considering that we don't have the same policy as Europe does, yet Europe has stricter citizenship guidelines than we do by far, even Mexico. So I think it's just something that we would have to probably take a look at.
Okay. Shannon?
To go off what Matthew was saying, actually Ireland has a very liberal take on this exact topic. So Ireland will allow anyone who comes there pregnant this is before they reformed it a couple years ago, but any woman who comes there pregnant and has a baby on their soil, they are automatically entitled to an allowance until they're 18. You go to the post office every 2 weeks and you pick up a check. And there's no other forms of identity that need to be had other than you being birthed there. And that happens until they're 18. So I would say, it's like their welfare kind of, if you look at it like that. But there are no other identifiers to make them become a citizen other than that. And I think that America needs to, like you said, look at everyone else's policy on this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. Here's the thing. The Civil War happened, right? It stopped in 1965, the Emancipation Proclamation. After that, we have 68, when the Republicans are controlling Congress and the Southerners have all these slaves. And they're like, they don't have citizenship. So the basis of this law in 68 was to grant citizenship to slaves, freed slaves. And anybody who was subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, that's the core of this law, right? And the Republicans control Congress. They passed it. They passed that law, the 14th Amendment. What we have today is not the same situation. It's not the same scenario. And because we have a crisis, and some people, debate, is this a crisis? Is this not a crisis? But to me, it is, because when you have, like the statistic that you have up right now, Naomi, when you have more births from illegals than American births, that's a crisis. There's something called birth tourism. And you alluded to that, Solomon, where Chinese and Asian parents go to Guam and to other places. Guam is about 5 hours from mainland China. And they go there and they vacation for 3 months, 1 month, whatever, and they have a baby born in America, and they want, a lot of the things that, American citizens have. That's a huge issue. And it's not just about, 75% of Mexicans and Guatemalans on federal welfare programs, but it's just about the right to citizenship and American exceptionalism, right? It's about understanding what type of nation do we want. Do we want a nation where anybody and everybody can just come whenever they want, a no borders country? Or do we want to maintain the integrity of the union and have people come in the right way through applying and things like that?
And I think it's important to note, you said it was based on slavery, and this was for, African Americans. But actually, when it was first enacted, it excluded Japanese and Chinese. And because of our gentleman's agreement with them, they changed it. So in a way, they were politically forced to accept the Asians in, or risk, no imports or exports. And I think it kind of like followed suit with the other countries, in a way that, hey, if they could come in, we do too. But now with Trump's stance on importing and exporting goods and bringing jobs back to America, I think we can now safely say, let's start limiting their access to America.
That's good, Naomi. Can you send me that? Because that speaks to the actual intent. If you're excluding countries, like, it's not wrong to exclude.
It's in the Constitution.
It's in the, okay.
No, it is in the Federalist Papers under, actually I have it right here. I'll read it to you guys. Under Alexander Hamilton's Naturalization of Foreigners statement. Yeah, he touches on it, and he goes on to say this statement: immigration is typically tolerated, sometimes welcomed by the recipient population, provided that the numbers of entrants and their pace of assimilation do not seriously challenge existing perceptions.
Wow.
And I think we have voided this whole statement because we are way past, allowing just a couple in, where they're now dominating, our whole country. They're one of the top minority races is Hispanic now. And we're not talking about, Puerto Rican. We're talking about Chilean, Argentinian, Brazil. The news recently had, I think it was a bunch of people leaving Nicaragua, and they were going to Brazil's border, and they were sneaking in because they were sick of everything going on. But they do that to us every day, and why don't we get a spread in National Geographic? We just get called racist and say, keep the border open.
Okay, so Naomi, to your point, I want us to kind of just have a little bit of dialogue around this. So, let's talk about the threat, because I think, one of the things with the border, you want safety, and people are concerned about jobs being taken from America. Are illegal immigrants really a threat? I mean, keep in mind, they're not only bringing their physical bodies, but they're also bringing skills. They are also bringing expertise in different areas. Mm-hmm. They're also bringing their language and their culture, and a lot of the things that make America what it is. We are with different backgrounds, different foods. I mean, is this really a threat? Is this really something that we really need to be concerned about?
Matthew, you're muted.
Oh, okay. So
Uh-oh.
here's the thing about that. Whenever you apply for citizenship, they ask you, what they go through your financial history, and it's not just South America and Central America, it's also Africa, Europe. There's a mix of people that want to come over. The challenge is when you have people coming in mass, you have to account for what is the financial makeup of these people, and right to your point, what are they coming to bring? Are they coming for school? Are they coming for marriage? Are they coming for whatever reason? You cannot overrun your economic system, and I that's the challenge. I mean, if you look at the statistic that's up right now, 75% of Mexican and Guatemalan legal and illegal immigrant children are using federal welfare program. And to this point, lots of Africans that immigrate over here, they're not on welfare. In fact, there was a statistic that said that Nigerian African people that immigrate to America, the right way, by the way, legally, they make more than most white counterparts. And so it's not like being racist it's just about keeping the integrity of your country. We have people that come here and that want to come here, that are in line to come here, that want to start businesses, that want to start jobs, that want to do things, that want to study and things like that. And we have to make sure that we make way for those people that are going to, like you said, make America great, and not those that are just fleeing their country, because that's another issue. We just can't accept people because they want to flee their country. You have to have accountability for those nations to make it right for their citizenry. South America, Central America, people in the Middle East, you have to have that accountability.
It is a real risk reward type thing. And a lot of these immigrants, if you haven't noticed, if you check the 2010 United States Census, which Trump's trying to change, there's no questions regarding immigration status or if you speak English. Obama changed that. Every year prior they did a census, they had some sort of question regarding immigration. And I would say why? If you look at the stats, the majority of immigrants, illegal immigrants tend to vote overwhelmingly Democrat. So this could possibly also be a ploy to allow potential voters in, because the census changed. Now they can be counted on the census, particularly in California. And I don't want to, say all of them are bad, obviously, but there is a problem. I live in Long Island, and there's a problem with MS-13. There was a few girls in a town not too far from me that were chopped up by MS-13, 16 and a 15-year-old. That's a real problem, and it's something that we are willing to accept. Another issue is, particularly, I think there was a problem with car washes in New York. Also problem with the $15 minimum wage. A lot of workers were Guatemalan. They laid them off, and all they did was they started working under the table. So now that money gets lost in the system. So if we're having that mass of people, we already have a hard enough time taking care of our own. How are we going to take care of that number of people coming in?
We're looking for. I was basically just gonna echo what honestly both of Matthew said. It's like, if you have this, I mean, I know you said at the beginning that you have all these people coming over. Oh, they're not all bad. They come, they're bringing trade, they're bringing business, they're bringing all of this. That's true. But to me, that's when you have to start looking at percentages, like how many are doing that. Now, granted, like when you were talking about the Nigerians, when other people, like even Indians, being politically correct, I guess, when they come over, they bring businesses. Like, I mean, most people believe that white people are the main, like, whoa, they're the richest people right now in America. No, Asians and Indians outperform them when it comes down to businesses. So to that extent, yeah, I'm all for it. Especially since when they come over illegally, especially almost every immigrant I've ever met that comes over, they have like this amazing work ethic, and it's almost like this, I had to go through all of that stuff to get this. I have skin in the game. I'm not about to mess this up. Then you have, of course, Americans that were born here who, let's be honest, a lot of times we take it for granted.
Absolutely.
We don't have to, we didn't have to go through the whole process of getting citizenship. We were born with it. So it's like, oh, we're an American. And half the time, or even most of the time, you have people that immigrated who take more pride in being an American than people born here. Now, to the point of people coming over and we don't have enough, I guess, places for them, we can't take care of them. And honestly, if there is no place for them here or they don't make their own place here, you do get gangs like MS-13. It's like, I think we said, like, when we were at YBLS, they said, what do most Hispanics or people do when they migrate over? They go into the gangs if there is no place made for them. Now, I would have to look more into that because, again, I have met, some of my best friends are, well, they used to be illegal immigrants. I mean, now they've gotten their citizenship. But the only thing that was holding them back from accomplishing what they wanted to do was getting that citizenship. They were afraid that if they were to try to pursue what they wanted to, they would, run into so many roadblocks and possibly get deported. Now that they have their citizenship, they both, like, almost instantly started their own business, running it wonderfully. So in that instance, I'm all for it. But in the instance of people just coming over looking for a free way out, like you come over and then you hop on welfare and you have no intention of getting off of it. Sorry, I'm against that. I mean, I'm against people born here really hopping on welfare and with no intention of getting off of it. And I guess I'll kind of shut off there because I really want to hear Cordell as well.
Cordell, come on through. Let's hear from you.
Apparently my opinion is very popular. So yeah, I am going to, for the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to just state, a lot of times I'm going to take a leftist position on things, just solely for the purpose of let's challenge our mind. Because if we can't challenge the things that we believe in or the ideas that we stand upon, then how are we going to be able to say that we're better than the leftists? And they're truly wrong. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to just address really quickly Matthew Redmond's his point about people fleeing here from other countries. Leftists would take that and they would probably rebut, okay, but what about the colonists? The colonists came over here and they were fleeing from religious persecution and blah, 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 blah. Yes, they were. Colonists came over to a place that was not a nation state, and we were getting into the era where nation states were becoming a thing. Well, kingdoms were starting to be phased out, but nation states were starting to come on. But they came over during a time when they were, yes, being religiously persecuted, and they came over to a place that wasn't a nation state, first of all. And they weren't actually forming a state. They realized that they were colonies of the British Empire. They just didn't have that kind of stranglehold that the mainlanders in Britain would have had if they were living over in Britain. So they're like, okay, we can be a little bit more hippie over here. We like to, do our colonist thing. I don't know what colonists are. Eat grass? I don't know. But they would do that. They decided that they didn't want to be, directly under the boots of the British, but they were going to be by proxy under the boots of the British. So they were fond of being colonists until the British started being big spot. Until the British started really abusing their power, that's when the people decided to fight back, and that's how America was born on a conspiracy. More on that later. But that's how come you cannot say, hey, the people who came to this country came to this country. No, the people who came to this land were known that they were going to still be under the control of another government. But they had they were all right with that. They were all right with that. They still knew that they were British citizens, just under a different colony. All right. These people coming over here illegally, they don't necessarily. I'm not going to say they don't want to be citizens of the United States, because some of them might, and we don't know that. But here's another point that ties into this. A lot of them come over to this country, and they get into the communities that house their demographic. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be explicitly their nationality in that neighborhood. But as long as oh, these people speak English. These people speak Chinese, but some of them are from Taiwan. Some of them are from China. Some of these people speak Spanish, but some of them are from the Dominican Republic. Some of them from Peru. Some of them from Mexico. It doesn't matter. They get into that area, and they form these little communities of solely themselves. Shannon said that, yes, this is what America is formed on, and that is exactly right. America is a melting pot. It is a place where people from all over come and they blend together. But all these people don't want to do that. They don't want to become part of these. They don't want to assimilate to America. They don't want to become part of this country.
Someone on Instagram said, what about the sex slaves?
The sex slaves.
Yeah. How do they come into this conversation when they're forced over here?
They don't.
They don't.
No, they don't come into the conversation because a sex slave, first of all, the conversation is about a child, and we're talking about citizenship. If somebody is forced over here, they're not a citizen, even if they come over against their will. That has nothing to do with citizenship. They're still Russian or wherever they're coming from. They still have to maintain the same sovereignty of where they came from. Just because even if they were forced on here, we've heard about the containers of people from China. Even if they were forced on here and actually, quote unquote, sold into sexual slavery, their citizenship does not change. It just stays the same of the original person that they have. So I guess I'll answer that part. But I wanted to go back to some of the things that some people were saying. Now, we need to define most, because I think that's a very dangerous thing to say if we're going to define most. If most is defined by 50%, so if you're trying to say that 51% of the people who come here illegally are in gangs, that is false. It is almost impossible that you could say that the majority or even a large portion. To me, I look at it to be closer to when a lot of people will say like a lot of black people are criminals or the majority of black people are criminals. No. It might be around 3% of the 97, but the 97 is good. So when you say the majority of the people who come here sometimes will get involved in gang activity. Yeah, we do understand that MS-13 does exist. We have heard they're really, really big in New York. But, I mean, it's like right now, let's say we have 7,000 people coming from the border. Based on that statement, that means like 3,800 of them are MS-13. I'm not ready to believe that. It could be possible, like I said, because it's kind of hard to get facts, and that's why I say, remember, this is an opinion show, so I'm not necessarily going to say it's in fact. I'm just going on what I see. So maybe depending on, because I know we're from different parts of the country, so what you see where you live could change. But I'm from Atlanta, and if anybody's from Atlanta and they've ever been to the north side of Atlanta, you don't really see any gang people. You understand? You'll see they might mark up some stuff, but a lot of people in like Gwinnett County do not have paperwork, but they're not out there doing some of the stuff that, I think Matthew number 2 said that, somebody got chopped up and, thrown in the river. That's not the type of illegal immigrants that we're having in Georgia. So I think while I do understand, like I said, it is illegal to cross the border, that is breaking a crime. So you can technically classify them as a criminal for doing that. What I think we should be very careful of is not to try to classify an entire group of people who come here as like violent. Like that's savage. The stuff MS-13 does is savage, cutting people up or whatever the case may be. That's why I say yes. We use the term illegal because they cross the border, and you understand we understand that's a crime. But to put it to the point of being like MS-13, they're coming over here with machetes, chopping up good old citizens. I don't think that's what's going on. And then the other thing about the welfare, I would like, even though I know it says they can use these programs, I would like to find out how. Because I've talked to people who are actually down there at WIC and things like that, and they say you have to have a social security number.
Well, that's not true.
Well, I'm just saying, I only can speak for like in Georgia.
Well,
go ahead.
And that is where a big part of them go. So in Nevada, because I've lived there, I was a resident, people that get on welfare there, they will put a copy of it, like you copy your documents when you go to welfare. They do not take your original. You can actually give them a copy of it, and they just edit someone else's. So if I know Solomon, I can just scan it on my computer and change it. They don't verify the social security number. They don't. Right. And that's why a lot of them have access to welfare. If you looked at the screen share I showed, it shows the statistics of welfare. They are the dominant whatever for welfare. And it's weird because even when they become citizens and they have jobs, they still are on welfare. It's not like they ever at some point attempt to get off welfare. And I hate to be like racist a little bit, but it kind of is just like a Black person. You know, we're so ingrained, and it is what it is. We're so ingrained in needing to be on welfare since they gave it to us, that we have Black women who won't even get married because they want to save their welfare. And it's the same ideology with the immigrants that have their babies here. Them babies get older, and guess what? They're not getting married because they want to get their welfare still.
Okay, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So you don't come from my people. But so going back to this whole the whole thing about the sex slave. So I want to talk about, and there's nothing funny about this. So let me get my face right. I was laughing about the whole anyway. For children who are, you know, the pregnant mother who was forced into slavery. She's a sex slave. She's here. She gives birth. I personally believe that child should be able to receive the benefits of being here because they were born here in this country. I feel like, you know, and it's not her fault. You know, I've never been a sex slave. I don't plan to be a sex slave, but I can only imagine and I'm coming from an empathetic point of view here. I can only imagine the pressure, the sadness, the depression. I mean, I just couldn't imagine. And so as a mother, any good mother is going to want to take care of her child and to make sure that her child has the proper, you know, nourishment, to make sure that the child has food, shelter, you know, whatever, you name it. So I don't, especially if Americans or those who are in some sort of power find out that this woman was a sex slave and that her baby was born here in America while she was sex slaving or whatever, like that, I think that's another part of our ideals, is taking care of people and making sure that they are okay. And so I do believe that child should, you know, be able to get benefits. Now, I do also believe, Naomi, you were speaking about welfare earlier, you know, some folks, you know, getting on it and they stay on it. You know, I do believe we should have some caps and some things in place to moderate that. But for the baby, I'm here for the babies. That was all.
I think Matthew was next. What do you have this face? Go ahead. Which Matthew? I unmuted you both. There we go.
Who wants to go first?
You're going.
Hey, hi. Well, I got to respond to Solomon really fast. I think he misinterpreted what I was saying. I didn't mean everybody or most, but nevertheless, it still is a problem. And if I'm going to bring the argument back to the welfare, I would, you know, the early 1900s, 1800s, I guess you could say, when the Italians and Irish came over, they came and they used to have to sign documents that they would receive absolutely no government funding whatsoever. And this was also before they had housing laws. So remember, we see all those pictures when they were all humped up in that one little room?
Yeah.
And they still were working, and they still wanted to come here and do the right thing. I'm not saying everyone that's coming across illegally is not trying to do the right thing, but how much can we provide for everybody? We still have to think about that. How much can we actually provide? Because we still have problems within our own communities.
Yeah.
And now we're bringing in more people that have problems with finances and et cetera, and they all want to work the low-income jobs as well. We have to think about that. Can we actually support them without negating the benefits to people that already were here or are trying to come here legally? And if we can do that, you know, because we are some people say multicultural society, some people, you know, say just black, white, whatever. Regardless, we are here on the basis of values, and I get the empathetic argument, but doing that will also probably trump someone else's chances. We have to think about that. Someone else's child, if we're going to be empathetic.
I like that. No, I like that, Sanchez, and I want to talk about Cordell. I'm going to try and keep this under a minute. But when we talk about people assimilating, like, we have to think, who are we letting in? There's laws, immigration laws, for a purpose, right? America has values. We have standards. And we want people to come in that agree with American values. And Cordell was talking about, we're allowing people in that don't care. A lot of times they don't care about learning English. They don't care about assimilating into mainstream America, true American values. So we have to think, when we're opening borders and we're letting anybody come in, we're allowing people to come in that will have disregard for the free enterprise system, disregard. They'll you talked about the Sanchez, like the labor market competition will be tipped in a different way. We have people that we're trying to take care of, are needy, are those that are less fortunate in our society right now. And to the president's point, these nations aren't sending their best and brightest. They're not sending their best and brightest. We have to take that into consideration. There's two overarching issues with the immigration policy. Number one is economic, and number two is security. When we talk about the Syrian crisis and the Syrian refugee crisis, that's a security concern. When we talk about people coming from Central and South America, it's not that we don't want to uplift these people and let them have a certain value of life, but we have to think about the needs of our people and think about, what are you coming here to do? Are you going to come and fight for American values that we espouse? Or are you just coming because you want to flee your authoritarian regime, like in Venezuela? You want to flee your country because there's no jobs, there's no things like that. We can't just accept everybody that wants to flee a dictatorial type of country. That's why we promote American exceptionalism. That's why we promote liberty, so that these other nations can adopt the values in their country, so people will want to stay. I mean, if I go to Israel, they're not letting me be a citizen, even if I prove that I'm Jewish. If I go to Spain or Japan, they're not letting me be a citizen, even if I marry one of their broads. I'm kidding. But even if I marry one of their people, they're not going to let me be a citizen. There's a specific reason for that. And America has to understand that too. I mean, we don't have a lot of jobs. America has not, we're not as fully developed to the capacity that we can be. Surely the economic indicators have been good over the last 2 years, but we're not developing as much as we have. We're in deficits, trade deficits right now. And if we allow 300,000, 3 million people per year, by the way, to immigrate in, it's just going to exacerbate our problems.
Go ahead, Joe. Joe, you said you wanted to go next, right?
Okay, well, hold on, Cordell. I just want to shed light a little bit on what Matthew just said. So when the Immigration Act, that naturalized citizens and their babies first came about, I think it was like 1929 or somewhere around there, before it got reformed in like the 50s or 60s. Washington actually combated it, and it was initially supposed to only allow in a certain amount of people per year. It was an annual thing. If you missed the cutoff, guess what? You could not come in. You could not get citizenship. And so when you fast forward today and you look at those immigration tests, I don't know if anybody's ever looked at one, but my dad is an immigrant. So I'm curious to know who else has an immigrant father or mother in this that actually had to become a citizen, because my father had to become a citizen. They ask you a bunch of these things about America, and they ask you, how can you contribute to American society? What will you do to prove that you're an American? And some of the options are like, join the military, join the workforce, give back. They don't ask you, when you come and can't find a job, what are you going to do? Those aren't on there. So I think the intent of why they're coming here and why they're choosing to have their babies here over choosing to have their babies in other countries, says a lot about us and how we're being taken advantage of as Americans. I mean, the job market isn't what it used to be. When my father came here, he was illegal when he came here. And he couldn't get a job. So he had to link up with other Indian people and get a job under the table at like a restaurant or something like that. And so he was able to get citizenship. And then guess what? He started his own business. And then after that, he just was like, I'm over it. I'll be an Uber driver. You know what I mean? But he has like 5 kids. So, he never has once been on welfare. He never had to once lie about his citizenship. And he had never been arrested or committed any crimes. So not all of them that come here and have kids are bad. And not all the kids are going to end up, rebelling against America. which initially when this Immigration Act was passed, that was the fear. They would come here, learn how good, you know, our values were, how our jobs worked, and they would leave and go back to their country and make it stronger than ours. That was the initial paranoia of America. So now that we're past that, we're way too liberal. And I think Trump's view on it is it's a little like radical. Maybe if he hones it in a bit, you know, and reforms it just a bit, because Shannon said she likes the babies, you know, okay, we all love babies, but them babies going to get older at one point and pollute the jails. They're going to get older at one point, take all the jobs, and they're going to get older and take all the scholarships for college. Most of these immigrants now that are like 18, 19, that are like protesting, they're taking all the scholarship money. My baby, because she half white, ain't going to get that money. If they don't care that she's half black, half Indian, she put half white on there, she's not getting it. She's out of the loop now because she's not minority enough, because there's Hispanics who come here who are more important because there's so many of them. Go ahead, Cordell.
Wait, my bad. It was Joe next.
Oh, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like all of us are going to come from a place of empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what. But you can't make law based on empathy. Just because you feel bad about something or someone, you can't base all of your laws on that. I think that's very bad policy. But that's not really what I wanted to address. I feel like just want to make sure we're all on that same page. Wanted to address what Cordell said earlier, though, about the how pretty much the settlers, they were fleeing religious persecution. And you try to equate that to what's happening today. I don't think that's a fair comparison, because that was happening before America was America. It's like if you let's say you're building a house. If everybody that walked over the plot that you were going to build your house on, if they had a claim to it, would you allow them to then come later and try to stake claim on your house that you've been living in for 20 years? That's how I look at it. I mean, I know that's very simplistic, maybe very basic, maybe even, I'm pretty sure there's holes in it, but I don't think you can equate to pre-America to modern America, because after a certain point, we set up laws to prevent, basically excess from coming in. And I would love to hear what you have to say about that, Cordell, or anyone really.
Joe, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that actually was my point. That actually was what I was saying. I completely agree. I was just making the position that a leftist typically make about people fleeing persecution from another country. And you're absolutely right. They did this before America was America. They weren't coming to the country that was, because there wasn't a country. There was a continent populated by Algonquins and Arawaks and Mohawks and all sorts of different peoples. So they came to a land, just like any other land, one that didn't have any established state to it, or established territory belonging to any nation to it. So yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. Furthermore, what I really wanted to get into was that talk about the people who come over here and what they are willing to do for this country. And let me just use the quote that the left likes to use all the time. The quote that's on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, give me your poor, give me your hungry, yearning masses, blah, blah, blah. Willing to be free. Who are willing to be free is something that they always miss. First off, we cannot base policy, and this is what, I think Jim Acosta did this. He tried to pull that argument out, oh, tired, poor, hungry, and free, blah, blah. You cannot base a policy based on something written on a statue. Like, there was a statue in the movie, Scary Movie 2, where it was like Thomas Jefferson said, hey, once you go black, you don't go back. I ain't gonna base no policy on that shit, you feel me? So you can't base a policy on a statue. It's just a statue, made by the French, by the way, so still gross. But the people who are coming and yearning to be free, that's the thing that people always miss all the time. They're not yearning to be free in their country. Because if they were, why is the spirit of revolution dead? These people are from corrupt countries. They're not corrupt. Their governments are corrupt. What happened to the spirit of revolution? How come nobody wants to stand up to their government anymore, except for us here in the privileged world? We in America, we like to hashtag resist against a government that was democratically elected and hasn't really done anything atrocious. I'm like, last administration did some sketchy shit. We can get into that later, but you can say, you can try to twist everything that Trump has done all you want, but if you look deeper into it, I can very rarely find an example. I don't even know if I can find an example of something that he's done that you can legitimately claim is an atrocity. Legitimately say that, hey, Trump started this and it is an atrocity. I don't think I could find one of those examples. So they don't want to stand up and start a revolution in their country, but they want to come into our country and do what exactly? I'm not sure. But that kind of shows you that the spirit of revolution is dead, and that's why I think they should. And this is not my argument. This is the argument that this is actually the argument that made me pro-wall. It was made by Ray Jahalik on YouTube, and he said that yes, we should weld the border so Mexico and these other countries can have their revolution. They can have that. They can fight for their country because their countries are not shitholes. Their countries are actually pretty goddamn beautiful. They're pretty great. Potentially, but in practice, not really, because they have such corrupt governments. So they should be able to stay in their country and fight for a country for a better day. That's what we want. Because when our allies, and most of these people are our allies, so when our allies are strong, we can be stronger. You know what I'm saying? So we can take the pressure off us all the time. So we don't have to be like, damn, how come we got to go into Nicaragua again? How come we got to send troops over into Peru or whatever country because they have this corrupt government? No. They can stand up and do it for themselves. We want strong allies.